Okay, we're going. Oh, it's me. It's been a while. Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 35 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I'm Rod, and I am actually nourished today. I went for a hike, and I thought I was going to be tired like I normally am, but I had an Impossible meatball sub, and I have protein and vitamins in my body now. So I'm ready to go.
And I'm JC, and at the time that this is posted, I will have just been at We Can Be Heroes Comics, who's doing an autograph signing that is going to have the voices of Morph, Magneto, Storm, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and I forgot who the last one was, but I'm sure I'll just update the pictures of the stuff I got signed by them. Cyclops is Waiting for Me as our weekly podcast series. We're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode that we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. Along the way, we also launched our companion show, the Xavier Files, with interviews of members of the X-Men community, including voice actors from the series. And since season 2 of X-Men 97 is now a ways off, we're getting back to the second half of our first ever watch through for us of X-Men Evolution.
Some quick reminders: we're a recap show about a series that started over 20 years ago. I keep forgetting about that because we spent the last few months in current stuff.
Talking about last week.
There will be spoilers. If you don't want to spoil for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and Facebook. And Rod, for the most part, I've remembered to at least throw the clips up every week onto Threads. And now when we do a picture post, it auto posts to our Threads too, so it makes it look like we give a shit about that platform.
Beautiful. Maybe we'll get into the Threads bonus program because I'm not in it.
I mean, you have access to the account too, so we could just both post stuff.
No, the bonus.
I know. We have to post stuff to get the bonuses, though.
I don't think that's the thing. It's really random. I have friends that got offered the bonus that never posted on there. And then that's why they started. It's a whole thing. I've complained to Meta. Meta, if you're listening, I've already talked to your help desk at VidCon. Please get back to me like you said you would. Now into the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 5, titled Blind Alley. I forgot to look up if this was a dated phrase, because I get why they named it this because of what happens in the episode, but it seems like that they normally do like play on words and double entendre stuff or whatever.
I'm looking that up. Is your Blind Alley meaning?
Aired October 19th, 2002, and currently sits at a 7.4 star rating on IMDb.
Blind Alley, a course of action leading nowhere. I had never heard that phrase ever before in my life.
I guess that kind of describes what happens in this episode, because right before recording, we both talked about how few notes we took on this episode.
Yeah. Also, can't help now but wonder if that was also a reference when they named the character Blind Al in the Deadpool series.
Oh, I thought it was just to be offensive.
I mean, it did that too.
Yeah. Speaking of, we both seen it. I've seen it 3 times now. How fun was that?
I had a great conversation about that today with people. It is not a perfect movie. It is exactly what I wanted it to be, and I had a great time watching it, and that's all I needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of the movie is, I mean, you're allowed to not like stuff. Mm-hmm. That's fine. But I think the whole point of the movie is, don't worry about it. Whatever it is, you were like timelines, whatever. The whole point is that it gives you the feeling, or at least gave me the feeling of like mashing your action figures together, and it was fun. And my brother specifically, I think I even said on this podcast, my brother only had one wish for the movie: to see Logan put on the cowl in the yellow outfit and then do a pose. And they did it twice.
And he did the really uncomfortable pose where it's like the shoulders forward, elbows back. It's like the human body does not work like that.
Yeah, you got to know that they had the comic book on set, and they was like, okay, here's where we're going to land.
There's one cover that got referenced 700 times probably. Yeah.
Right. And then on bonus, my younger brother's name is Peter. So I guess minor spoiler here, for the third act, when all the Deadpools are cheering for Peter, it's like, there's not a better way for this to end for my brother. Like this, and then so when he left the movie, he texted me, I wanted nothing else from a movie. This movie gave me everything I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I can see that. But we can talk about that later. But it was fun. If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth going to see for fun. Don't go expecting like end game level like stakes and connectivity and stuff.
Yeah, we won't be able to record our Deadpool or Deadpool and Wolverine watch along until that comes to Disney Plus. So we got some time.
Yeah, and that'll probably be like next year because
it's still making too much money.
Yeah, it's gonna hit $1 billion. I mean, it's like right there. Yeah, so it'll probably be like what, like they're gonna do something funny, right? St. Patrick's Day or something dumb. I don't know.
I don't know. You make all the fucking dumb predictions that come true. So
Okay, I guess that's my dumb one because I didn't think about it. St. Patrick's Day, is that the one?
it's gonna be a green Deadpool outfit, and I'm just gonna send you a fucking like, glitter bomb.
Wait, what was the one I texted you when we were between recording? Oh, it didn't happen at San Diego Comic-Con, but maybe I'm just gonna put it out there based on nothing, just because I was high one day and scrolling through Instagram, and I followed Jordan Peele, and he just had one post that was just a date, like in October. It was like, and it was in a kind of a thin font. I was like, what if all this delay on Blade is that Disney's going to announce Jordan Peele directs Blade? That would be a mic drop, wouldn't it?
Let's get into the show.
Yeah. So it opens up with Area 51.
Yes, it does.
I know it's not the 90s. It's basically the 90s. That's, of course, it has to. I guess early 2000s was still like an Area 51 kind of craze.
Yeah, there was just like, there was some fascination with it. And then obviously the last time we saw it was when, they had to bust in there to get all the captured X-Men and Brotherhood kids, and they left Mystique behind.
Yeah. So I'm glad that this show does so many flashbacks, because even though it wasn't between seasons, it was basically between seasons for us, because this was episode 5 of the season. But we've spent 3 months between episode 4 and this one. 4 months?
We're 4 months because we had enough interviews too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so when the one soldier was like, how did you even capture her? I was like, yeah, how did you capture her? And then she had the flashback, like, that's right, because I made the joke about Cyclops having a habit of leaving shapeshifters behind during battles.
Like often.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the moment where the doctor's like, oh yeah, we need to get some like additional restraints, and then leaves the other doctor behind him like, you fucking idiot. Yep. As far as I could tell, the doctor names, Dr. Eden, like they were just, this show does not do the Easter egg thing. So I've actually now, after this session of recording, given up looking for Easter eggs from this kind of stuff. So
watch like season 4 being like, we decided to do Easter eggs. Yeah, they're like, we hired Larry Hughes to consult. I
do love though the soldier that she does turn into and almost like knocks out, and he just yells into his radio, she looks like me, and then he says its name, and I'm like, that's gonna get you shot, bro.
Right? And also like I don't, maybe it was just me reading into it, but like they showed a shot of another guard outside hearing the message, and the way they animated him, it looked less like confirm and more of like a, I don't know who Chris looks like.
No, I mean, think about it. You're on a major base. Do you know what every other soldier looks like and know their name too?
Yeah. And also it's kind of dumb, because that's the reason she changed in the first place, right? Because they announced over the speakers, like, looks like Dr. blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then they announced over the radio, and then she changed again to Raven, right? I always say crows, but it has to be Raven.
Yeah, she goes around a corner and flies off with the well-placed flock of ravens to disappear with the group. Yeah.
Oh, that makes more sense for her. Okay, because I just assumed she turned into all of them, but we haven't.
No,
we haven't seen yet that she can turn into many animals.
She could wild shape. She can't summon animals. Two very different druid abilities from D&D.
I'm still not quite sure, especially because later when she does another morph into an animal, it doesn't happen the way I think. It's more like a Star Trek teleport.
It literally looks like the teleport thing from Mr. Fantastic from Multiverse of Madness, like the way that it like shapes around her and stuff like that. It was definitely not how I pictured an organic shapeshifter changing not just their appearance, but literally their entire like body composition.
Yeah, that was a budget.
I'm just going to go out there and say I do not like the version of Mystique that turns into animals that are not humanoid. That just, it doesn't click for me in the same way.
It is weird. There's a few things with powers. You can see that there wasn't, I just mentioned Larry. There wasn't a Larry around to kind of like spot check power stuff.
I think it was even intentional, like even the conversations we've had with Stephen Gordon. I think they were just like, we're going to go out there on this stuff and not worry about being compared to the comics in that regard. So, yeah. And this choice, I don't dig that. So
yeah, it's not my favorite Mystique.
Yep. And then she flies off and we go into the intro. I did let the intro run because I haven't watched it in so long. I didn't realize they did start putting in lots and lots of different clips from various episodes at this point in it. And then the next 2 episodes that we're recording tonight, I literally skipped through. So.
Yeah. I don't know if it was always like this or if I mentioned this before, but I only noticed today, watching it, that Xavier's chair, this is bugging me. It's oriented in a way where it's not an X on his wheel. It could be an X, but they orient it so it's like a T or a cross. Come on, you were so close. You were right there. It's the shot where everyone's posing, so it would make sense for things to be, it's at the very end of the intro. Y'all are posing. What kept you from just making it an X? Like, the shape was there. It's just turned, a few degrees.
Oh, yeah, it's weird. In a lot of the artwork for it, it is vertical as opposed to the diagonal. You're totally right. It's so, okay. Reminder for future John, when this episode airs, you got an Instagram post.
There you go. And then my note here, when the actual episode opens up, is, okay, so child labor at the mansion. We're definitely in the early 2000s.
Yep. We have Magma, who is fixing the road. You have Sunspot, who's nowhere near. Like, I when we were interviewing Guy, I forgot that Sunspot was even in this fucking show because he's such a non-factor.
Same, and it was weird seeing him here because when he's powered up, he looks kind of the same. They animated very similarly.
Right, because that is where it is accurate to the comic from the power-up perspective.
But I just wasn't ready to not hear some like quippy, fuckboy thing come out of his mouth or something. Like, it was wild. Yeah.
Multiple figures out that he could get his work done by turning into many copies of himself, doing that quicker. I put Spike almost kills Rogue.
Oh,
she's
that's right.
hanging up something, and then he spikes the entire living room, and she's like dodging, getting like murdered by him, basically.
That's right. And I forgot that she hasn't run into Carol Danvers yet, right? So she's not like invincible. She's just strong.
Or if even at all in this show.
Yeah, I say yet just because I feel like there's so many things that are like, this is supposed to be kind of like a loose prequel to, like Jean and Scott's relationship and stuff.
Right, but we also know in this show that it does end on a cliffhanger and didn't get what people would want as a final season, so who knows what's going on with that. You get Bobby, who basically calls Hank a boomer, explaining that he could program the central computer, and he ends up just like not knowing how lights work.
I love to have the headcanon that Bobby like armed something halfway across the world instead or whatever.
Yeah, something. You have Thirst Trap, Scott, and Logan up on the roof, putting a satellite dish up.
I wish I get it. It's hot. You're on the roof, but like...
And then Cannonball shows he has no control over his powers because he's literally just like speeding forward and bouncing on the ground like you're skipping stones on a lake.
Yeah. Did Multiple go through puberty, or did I just imagine he looked like he's more grown up than we'd seen him before?
You're imagining stuff.
Okay, because like he seemed less childlike than I remember previously. Because previously he was like, "Are you 8?" And now he seems like a teenager.
Now he's 11.
Yeah. Kitty goes through the roof with a cable. I had questions about that. Like, I know she can phase through with the cable, but once she stops and the cable's through the ceiling, is that still functional? Like, I guess it displaces. Is that what we decided? I know we're not supposed to ask questions, and I just said that about Deadpool, but it just... I used to work in an audiovisual video company, and I was like, oh, that would have been handy, unless the cable doesn't work. When you know. So she phased the cable with her, got it up to the roof, and then let it not materialize, whatever making it whole would be, and then she went back down. Yeah, because later in another episode where she's driving, the car doesn't lose all electric function. So this version of Kitty's power, if she phases through something, it fucks it up, but if she phases the thing, it doesn't fuck up the thing. Okay. I guess that makes sense. That is handy, though, especially with wiring a ceiling. You don't have to drill through everything. Yeah, so she's handing the stuff off, and Scott starts asking Logan about, like, relationship type stuff. Oh, yeah. Which it's weird, right? Well, I love because this version, because of the age difference, they don't mess with the whole Logan-Jean story at all. So it's just funny having the context of every other version of these characters, where this is the one time Scott could ask Logan's advice about Jean, and it's not actually weird and creepy. And that has to be like why this scene happened, right? So they can like kind of touch on the issue without actually having this really inappropriate relationship, which I guess arguably the other ones are not great either, because what do we establish? Like Wolverine's like 200 plus years old now. 100. Like, or I guess I'm still thinking Deadpool. Yeah. And Jean's probably like 30s. Yeah. At oldest. Yeah, it's like a 60, 70 year difference. You're not wrong about that. Yeah. But Logan just is kind of like, yeah, I remember there was this one bike and I delayed and then I didn't get it. And it's like, cool. If it's not Sabretooth, he's not in love with it in this show. That was his nickname for Sabretooth. The bike. Wow. There's so many things you can read into on that. I'll let you do that. And then Wolverine is just finally like over it.
And he's like, if you don't tell her, I'm just going to do it for you. Like, he's just so over the bullshit. And that's the one, like, double entendre line I got from it, because it was like, oh, yeah, in the other versions of the show, it's if you don't go for it, I'm going to go for it, as opposed to I will tell her on your behalf. And then a raven, like, flies across, and I was like, oh, she got there quick.
Yeah, because these are, like, supersonic ravens. I mean, why not? She can turn into animals now.
From New Mexico, or is it New Mexico or Nevada? Nevada for Area 51, right?
I think it's Nevada. I haven't thought about Area 51 in a long time.
That bird flew fucking far.
Right. I guess we also don't know how long it's been, because they've been able to, like, start constructing the mansion again after it got destroyed. So, who knows? But yeah, it basically just, it makes you realize that the Raven knows, like, where Scott is, I guess, is like the point of that happening. And then Jean's supposed to be helping Storm set up, like, the water fountain out front, and instead she's, like, watching the thirst trap of Scott happening. And I love how, like, it's both Logan and Scott up there, but they make sure several times in the script, and credit to all of them who worked on this, even in the early 2000s, they were like, we don't want any confusion. They repeat Scott so many times, and Storm's like, oh, it's a good thing you're looking at Scott up there. Mm-hmm. Like, Scott, right? Yeah, Scott.
Well, and it doesn't happen in this episode, but in a couple episodes, they do explicitly state multiple times that Scott and Jean are both 18.
Yeah.
It does explicitly get stated.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because they came in at the same time, same class. We always have to remember this is a school. And since she's watching shirtless Scott, she almost, like, crushes Storm
with the fountain statue.
Yeah. And I kind of wondered, like, we've never seen how strong Storm is in this version of her. Like, would that just been a boys moment where she goes splat and, like, oops?
Yeah, we really haven't seen, like, the durability of Storm. We've seen her in the hand-to-hand fight in that season 1 finale where she was going against Mystique, but we haven't had, like, what happens when a sentinel hand crushes her or something like that, And then, she notices what's going on, and this is the first time we really get mention of the psychic rapport, where they refer to it as strong connection between Scott and Jean, which, we know from the animated series and then from comics and stuff like that, that's a pretty established scenario between the two of them having such a strong connection to each other.
So then I guess we fast forward a bit after they're done with their outside chores, and then inside,
I'm assuming Scott had the time to shower and not be gross and sweaty being on the roof.
Or not. That's how Jean found her.
Teenage boy.
That's how Jean found him. It's like, yeah, pheromones.
Ooh, musk.
And Scott and Jean bump into each other literally, and they're just about ready to decide they need to have, like, the define the relationship talk.
And they do that awkward moment where it's like they both want to do it. They think the other one wants to say something else first, so they keep, like, doing the step on top of each other. No, it's okay. You go. No, you go. And then Kurt, just ultimate cock block in the mansion, shows up.
I said the same thing, cock block, but it's kind of for a good reason. He says, like, hey, Alex is on the phone. He wants to talk to you. And I guess a reminder for anybody, Alex is Cyclops' brother. Also a reminder of fucking landlines and someone having to find you for a phone call.
Right. Yeah. And then this is the only part that, in hindsight of the episode, is a little weird, because you see Alex on the side of a road in Mexico who says his wallet got taken, and then he needs Scott to come down and get him. The question I have is, was that just what Scott was imagining on the other side? Because even if you use that other Raven that hit him on the roof as a red herring, did Mystique literally turn into Alex and dial him from a fucking, like, payphone in the middle of Mexico just to make the call to get him down there? Or was that just what was in his head?
Yeah, because she would have made the most inefficient cross-country trip, right? She would have flown from, like, Nevada or New Mexico to New York and then to Mexico, like a giant triangle. And
even if she didn't do the flight back and forth, just the fact that, like, her calling from a payphone, but I gotta believe if she could turn into a fucking bird, she could just disguise her voice without needing to transform into Alex and call from an alley.
I guess that was mostly for us to be like, okay, to be sold on that too.
Yeah, I mean, to trick us, obviously.
I thought you were gonna say, this is the 90s, 2000s in me thinking, how is that phone still connected after Kurt teleported? Because he goes through the sulfur dimension, right? So that can't still have the 2.4 gigahertz connection to the phone.
Yeah, when he comes back, it
reconnects.
It reconnects. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
it's like you just turned it off or brought it out of service range, and then you brought it back in. That's all.
I think I can't remember. I want to say that used to, like, if I went too far out, it would, like, hang up the phone. But anyway, it literally another don't think about it thing. But it was just funny to be like, that's still connected. And he went through hell.
Brimstone.
Yep.
And
so.
then, yeah, I also love, he's like, can't you get in touch with your foster parents? He's like, no. And Scott just accepts that. He's like, well, what the fuck's going on with your foster parents that you can't get in touch with them?
Yeah. It was a lot. Just like, it's like sitcom logic, right? It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go get you.
Yeah, I need to come get you, even though I have no certificates that prove I am your brother, and then get you to cross international borders to come back into the United States.
It's also interesting that he said, I'll see if I can get a flight out. It's like, my brother.
You have a jet.
You have a hangar full of air vehicles.
Yeah, you have multiple air vehicles. You flew one to Nevada a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And you've had, I think, other members, I forget if this show specifically, but at least in the X-Men universe, other members of the team fly you very long distances on their literal backs.
I don't know if in this one they've done that,
maybe.
but
I mean,
let's go with just the hangar full of aircraft.
Yeah. And so he tells Jean, like, well, I guess it's going to have to happen later. And she also just accepts. I guess it's his family or whatever. Or maybe if you're going to take a plane out, you can talk on the way over or take the jet to get. I don't know. There's so many.
I think I was mostly just surprised that she didn't go with him and they didn't take the jet. But again, sitcom logic, quote unquote.
Yeah. And we have to remember they're not in a relationship yet. So maybe it's not quite that so far. And they don't know he needs saving so far. They just think he lost his passport, right?
Yeah, they think he's just an idiot teenager.
That's valid. So then it just like hard cuts to Scott landing in Mexico on a regular plane.
Alex was at least there for
a few hours.
God, that's it. It's another 8 to 12 hours probably, yeah.
And I love the plane. I know there's no shade on the animators because budget and stuff, but the plane was literally just like a JPEG that like got zoomed in on to show approaching. I love it. And he goes and finds Alex. And surprise, it's not Alex.
It's Mystique, and she has knockout gas.
Smoke bomb.
Of the airport, too. Like, the security at that Mexican airport is trash.
Right.
And then he wakes up in the middle of the desert with no glasses.
Which, I have to admit, great premise. Like, that it's almost like a Seven or like a Saw kind of premise, right? Like, just not knowing where you are and being, like, severely disadvantaged. You know, like, and I love his whole thing is he knows he shouldn't open his eyes, but a couple times he decides to chance it.
Here's the thing about that I'm thinking, like, what would I do in his case? I would find a spot on the ground and I'd look at the ground and then slowly look up to just like make sure I'm not like hitting buildings and shit like that. I feel like he could have done it better, and he's had enough experience with having fucking optic blast eyes that he should have been able to see more shit. But I did appreciate that they took the first person perspective and actually showed, like, you know, he's like, all right, I'm gonna open my eyes, and you see, like, you know, the ruby color across everything. And it's like, cool, I didn't blow up any houses. So he is different than the Scott from 92 who blew up abandoned buildings.
I do remember he said, good news, nobody was there. Bad news, nobody was there. I was like, I get what you mean, but if you didn't know this context, be like, you kind of hope to kill somebody? Because I think you yelling would have been enough if anybody was in, like, audible or visible range. But, you know, whatever.
No. Yeah, and then it just keeps getting darker, and then coyotes arrive, and I just started laughing when the coyotes showed up.
So a few weeks back, I did a dumb and overextended myself on a hike. What that made me realize was, if anybody listening, friends, you know, listeners or whatever, if you ever see a story about, like, Rod got lost in the desert, don't spend the money and resources searching for me. Just like put it towards something more useful. I'm already gone by the time you thought of that. Because seeing Scott go through the desert, I mean, my first thought was like, how is he still in all of his clothes? Like, I've been like walking down Glendale when it's like 98 degrees and not wanting to keep my clothes on, and so like I know, you know, it's like animation stuff, but
it's also better to keep your clothes on because your sweat cools you. But aside from that,
I didn't even think about that. I just would have like ripped everything off.
Yeah, that's why you see like Middle Eastern countries. That's why they tend to be so covered. Is the clothing keeps them cool rather than overheats them. The
second like heat related thing I've learned in an X-Men context, a couple days ago I was having lunch with Ron Wasserman, you know, original theme songwriter, and one of the Newton brothers, current X-Men composers, and they brought that up because me and Ron got hot coffee, and Andy from Newton Brothers got like iced tea, and he's like, you guys are actually more right. And he said, he gave some anecdote about like a doctor friend of his being like, hot coffee makes you feel cooler for some biological reason. I was like, yeah, we're gonna go with that, and not just I needed caffeine and didn't know if they had iced coffee.
No, I didn't want to be awkward. No. So at that point, they start to chase him. Jean wakes up in the cold sweat, and that's where Professor X just totally gaslights her in the way he's like, well, I can't sense Scott if he's that far away, so there's no way you can sense Scott if he's that far away.
Yeah, I don't like this Xavier.
This Xavier sucks, dude.
I think we've said that before, but like, of all the people to discount her, anybody, this man has literally seen the impossible happen on a daily basis. And he's like, no, that can't be it. I mean, we do have that kid that teleports through hell to go from room to room. But you, sensing someone you care a lot about, that's impossible. Go back to sleep.
You see the coyotes are getting closer to Scott. He just starts shooting the coyotes, but he's not... He's not unleashing on them, because we've seen what he could do when he unleashes, like with fights with the Juggernaut and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he's just like kind of pseudo zapping the coyotes. And I'm like, dude, if you're in the desert and they're trying to eat you and like one has bit into your shoulder and you're all scratched up, and you got to let loose. I'm sorry. Like, yeah. I love animals, but if it's do or die, you got to do something.
Yeah, they're literally going to do this, would do the same thing to you and are going to. Yeah,
imagine coyotes with optic blasts.
New irrational fear unlocked.
Rod is never going to go on a hike again in LA because of that.
Not even that. There are little coyotes that walk up my driveway, because I live in a part of LA where like coyotes are just like stray dogs just walking around everywhere. Now to imagine them having optic blasts. But yeah, he did pull his punches, because I noticed in earlier scenes when he shot at like the ground and stuff, he like would take chunks of the ground out. But when we shot the coyote, it just like it was like a really hard punch.
Yeah, it was a punch.
And then the coyote got back up.
Yeah, and there were like fucking 12 of them, so they're like, we're just gonna keep going. As that's happening, the blasts do at least alert 2 workers from an oil rig, and are just like seeing flashes in the desert. If I was those guys, I would be so freaked out. I would worry that was like the aliens were coming.
Right, especially because they're kind of near Area 51, right? Or
no, they're in Mexico.
Oh, that's right. They're okay. I keep forgetting for the Mystique's whole flight pattern messed all this geography up for me. But yeah, it's funny that it turns out the one thing that he was holding back from doing could have helped him earlier. You know, like, yeah, I guess you don't want to look in the sky because of planes and shit. But like, he didn't. Do we know? To our knowledge, didn't hit anything in this fight, I mean, in the air.
It's what saved him in that episode with Alex where they were stuck in the middle of the water, was him just shooting wildly into the sky,
That's right.
But yeah, Scott won't kill the coyotes. He ends up like getting knocked off a ledge, and then the coyotes like very like gingerly follow him down. They're like, fuck yeah, we're getting dinner tonight. And then he gets saved by these workers. And Mystique is pissed off and is like, well, fuck it, I have to turn into an owl now. And that's where we get the weird transformation animation.
I hope that's what went through her head. Fuck it, I'm an owl now. As official Mystique merch.
Oh, if one of the two of us could actually design stuff.
If Mystique was a gamer and had merch.
Fuck it, I'm an owl now.
Okay, if we ever get to the point where we're doing merch, that might just be our.
Yeah. It's like, who could draw that isn't going to charge us?
Or sue us.
A lot of people will sue us, right?
Yeah, so I like that she's annoyed, but she was well aware of like the surroundings, right? She's the one that dropped him off there. She knew it was around there.
I think she was just literally depending on Scott being too nice to kill the coyotes.
And she probably mistook Scott for me. She's like, he'll die in the desert. Nope, he's not Rod.
I mean, he's literally like the Boy Scout character of the X-Men. Like, of anybody, he's the one who's gonna survive in the desert.
Because he kept his clothes on. I learned today.
Yep, you'd be dead in 6 minutes.
Yeah, I was almost dead in 6 minutes on the sidewalk at Glendale, so I don't know about the desert and coyotes would work.
Jean is still freaking out, and then she calls Alex in the middle of the night.
Right.
And Alex is like, obviously, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she panics, and she's like, okay, I want to know what happened once it cut away from her. Like, what was the rest of that conversation of like, so your brother got a call from you and then flew to Mexico. I'm going to fly there with the other X-Men and see what's going on. And Alex is just in Hawaii being like, okay, I guess call me in like 12 hours to let me know my brother's not dead. You know?
That's like the logic of movie telephone calls, right? Because no one ever ends a conversation like a normal person. Like they just hang up.
With 7 awkward goodbyes of no, you hang up first. Yeah.
So Alex is back there. He's like, well, fuck me, I guess.
Yep.
Also,
he's just like, Gene, and it's a dial tone.
That should, I know it's not the next episode because we've already watched it, but that would be a great opening. Next episode is just him waiting by the phone.
Sitting by the phone.
Yeah, so Scott wakes up in presumably a hospital, or at least a very large doctor's office.
Oh, it's a hospital.
It was a hospital. Oh, yeah, they say it later.
The gang members called it out later.
And this doctor's like, okay, we're going to take care of you. We just need you to open your eyes. Like, of course. It's the first thing.
Well, you got to make sure he doesn't have a concussion. The doctor's right. Like, that's the thing you're supposed to do, is you're supposed to look at somebody's eyes to make sure they're not, like, glazed over and rolling to the back of their skull, I think. So
that does make sense. I think I've just watched so many superhero movies, though, that whatever profession I'm in, if someone says something really outlandish like that, I'll be like, you know what? I'm not going to chance it. Because Scott's like, I can't do that. There's the one thing I can't do is open my eyes. Because what was like that comic strip I read where there's like a boxing match and like the one guy's like normal boxer and then the other guy walks up and he starts doing the the Dragon Ball thing, you know?
I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
What is it? The Dragon Ball?
Kamehameha.
Yeah. So his other boxer starts saying that and then it cuts to the press conference where he's like, it was very unlikely, but I wasn't going to stick around to find out. And so I think that would be me. Like, if I was like checking on somebody I didn't know, and they're like, I can't open my eyes. It's like, bet, I'm going to trust you. Whatever your reason is good enough for me, because unlikely to have optic blasts, but I'm not going to be the one to discover it.
And then that person falls into a coma, and you get your medical license revoked immediately.
Right. But you know what? I didn't get my head blown off by an optic blast. So.
It's true. But yeah, the doctor and the nurses force him open. And they literally just blast the ceiling off the roof off the whole hospital. So
yeah, my note was like, and then Scott kills a hospital full of people. At the very least, some of those nurses lost a limb, right? I
mean, shit probably collapsed in on them, and they just didn't want to address it. Yeah, X-Men have collateral damage, Rod. I don't know if you know that.
At least they addressed it in this episode. Then, of all people, we cut back to Xavier Cerebro, and he's like, "Yup, he's in Mexico City," and Jean should have just slapped him right there.
Well. At first, she's like, well, let's go get him. And I thought she was just like, fuck it, I'm going by myself. Like, that was also... Too, yeah. I thought she was just going to be like, cool, I'm stealing the jet. Because she was so, like, insulted by being gaslit by him.
Yeah, and also she was like, wait, you said you couldn't... like, you could have just gone to Cerebro and, like, looked this whole time? Because the one thing Xavier does say is, like, he's in Mexico City, but I can't pinpoint it this far away.
Yeah, they got to like a 5-mile radius or something along those lines.
I love the Gene's like, I'll find him. Which does kind of make sense because they're establishing that rapport now. So it's like, okay, so you do kind of like this like radar for Scott, I guess.
And then you cut back and he's wandering the city. And then this is very much a moment of the 90s, 2000s of finding a payphone, getting very excited because you have no other way of calling anybody, and the wire has been cut.
I don't think I've ever run into the wire being cut, but maybe it's because I never lived in a big enough city for something like that to happen.
I never had it happen when I needed to make a call, but growing up, an hour and a half outside of New York City, I definitely saw, heck, even New Haven, like by Yale University, wires would get cut on those things all the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I guess that also makes sense, like, as, like, it got more into, like, 2000s and stuff, it got more and more reinforced. Because I remember a couple times being on a payphone, like, this phone weighs 5 pounds just because of the cable.
Oh, dude, you could fuck somebody up with one of those phones.
Well, but that was one of the action movie tropes, right? Is, like, people getting strangled with those and stuff.
Well, yeah, because it was like a metal cord. It was to prevent people from being able to cut it in the middle. The problem was if you pull it hard enough, you could pull it out of the box because you ran out of the metal coating at that point.
Yeah.
They never cared enough to solve that problem. Jean arrives in the jet with Storm, Xavier, and Logan, who are basically like, we're just going to bring the adults for this mission to Mexico.
I think Xavier was like fan out. It was like, good plan. Was all kind of like, split up and see if we can find him, because he's probably not going very fast.
He opens his eyes, we're gonna see.
Yeah, right. And then we come back to Scott blind in an alley, and he gets jumped by a gang. I feel kind of, this is gonna be taken out of context, I kind of feel bad for the gang because they didn't know that one of their members was Mystique, and that person is probably dead in the gutter somewhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I assume this version of Mystique is totally the, like, not the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique. This is the one who's like killing somebody and just throwing their carcass into a closet kind of scenario.
Yeah. And so they try to rough him up, I guess not knowing. See, that's what's weird. They said they try to rough him up because, like, you messed up our hospital. So and I think they did call him a mutant, right? Like, because he saw a blast come out the top of the thing.
I don't remember if they specifically said the phrase or not, but they knew he was the one who did it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the vibe I got was they're like, you did something crazy that was inhuman to destroy this hospital, but they still decided to try to mess him up. I was like, man, I just wouldn't mess with that man. Like,
yeah, if this is the dude who could destroy your hospital, even if you don't know how he did it, him being the guy should be a sign that, I don't know, unless you're bringing a gun to the fight, maybe don't mess with this guy.
Yeah, I guess maybe that was the thing we're supposed to assume, is that the Fox censors, or not, was it Fox this was on?
No, this was Kids network. WB, I want to say.
WB. But when WB's like censors were like, yeah, we're just going to imply that there was weapons involved, but we can't actually show the guns.
Well, and they even made sure like one of the dudes had the like top button only button, like the very Edgar stereotype and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, they're obviously in a gang. I don't know if this is supposed to like imply cartel or stuff like that, but we're like, we're not going to give them guns. They're just going to beat him up. And then they fail miserably because he's able to basically blind fight. And then he uses his power and he shoots next to one of their heads, keeps a hold on that one, and then we find out that that one is actually Mystique.
Yeah. And I guess because he felt the wall, he felt confident about blasting it. But Mystique brings up a good point. She's like, try it again and see if you like destroy some family's apartment. Like, cool. I'm glad that some characters are a little aware in the situation.
Mystique definitely has that awareness of like, I can say the things that will rile him up, but also like make him hold back kind of scenario.
Yeah. And then I think it's about then when Mystique reveals herself and starts fighting Scott more hand to hand, that Jean senses, she's like, she sees something, and then she talks to Xavier over telepathy and stuff. He's near a big church looking thing, and Xavier's like, I know that building exactly. Like, how often do you come to Mexico City?
I do think that particular spot is like a tourist destination in Mexico City. I've seen the reference at least.
Yeah. So they all go that direction.
Mystique fights with a lot of drop kicks, like very wrestling style drop kicks. Scott ends up trying to shoot her, misses, blows up a car, and then she literally like goes to the top of these shelving things and tries to do in wrestling what we call a double stomp, where you're basically trying to just like land with all your weight on somebody with your feet to kill them. And I was like, oh, Mystique is actually not holding back. Like, I think she's actually trying to kill Scott at this point.
Oh, I didn't. Now that you bring it up, that is a good point. I wonder if they did some referencing from just like straight up wrestling then at that point.
There were certain moves that were like done that maybe a kung fu movie or two had been in there, but there's an era where you started seeing wrestling style moves in pop culture fights. And like even like I want to say it was Blade 2 or Blade Trinity, I forget which one, but Wesley Snipes literally does a suplex in the middle of that movie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And if you know anything about wrestling, nobody has ever died from a suplex. A suplex is actually a fairly safe move, and that killed a vampire. So there's like a whole other we're pissed off wrestling fan scenario.
That's funny. But yeah, that fight, they end up like start establishing that there's like a very like weak floor, and so Scott starts like, I think Mystique kicks through the floor at one point, then Scott blasts through the floor, and then the thing just kind of gives way for both of them. They kind of shoot each other into the basement, and then the moment
there are lots of crates down there.
Yeah, we don't know what they're for. It's the warehouse from Indiana Jones.
Yes. Yep.
At the end.
Yep. All priceless artifacts that are getting destroyed in the basement of this church.
That's just a given, right?
Yeah.
And what you knew was going to happen happens. Scott shoots out a light. Granted, it looked like it was by accident, but now both of them have to fight.
They established the crackling noise, and he heard it.
He heard it. Okay, I didn't notice that. So God, he can echolocate from here. Okay.
Or I mean, he knew the general direction of it, and then got lucky with the shot. So.
I was going to say that was a relatively small light. But he knocks out the light. Also, he had faith that there was one there.
Yeah, that'd be great. He knocks out one, and she's like, "This is fully lit, bro."
Or she just lies. She's like, "Oh no, I can't see," and just death drop kicks him or whatever she was gonna do.
Yep.
But then it's more of had this been done in live action, this would have been like this shot that all of us talked about, right? Like in a Daredevil situation, or whatever, because it was a very much like a one take in the dark, like Hong Kong kind of film.
Yeah, like. He's popping in and getting quick shots off and stuff like that. And then you do what you knew they were going to, where Jean arrives and it was like, oh, there's no way that was just Jean that easily. You know? And it was, they always do a really good job of planting seeds in this show, where it was like, oh yeah, I was able to track you from Cerebro, blah, 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 and knew exactly where you were. And that was established, before 2-3 minutes earlier. It's like, well, it's not that good.
Yeah. And so Scott was like, Cerebro told you where you were. I also love how confident he was. Like, part of me kind of wanted to be like, oh no, that was Jean. She just doesn't know much about Cerebro. Yeah. She misspoke about what Xavier said. Exactly.
He blasts her, and then Mystique tries to get back, and like at the last second, she does get caught by Jean, who just... This is where we see how resilient a character Mystique is from like a durability standpoint, because she's pushed through a brick wall that would make people pop.
Yeah, I actually had to backspace this note because I just started typing Jean kills Mystique. I thought she was going to at least knock her out. I thought that was going to be the thing. It's like, oh, she's knocked out, and because we're X-Men, we're not going to actually apprehend her. We're just going to leave her here and then go away. But no, Mystique keeps getting back up.
Yeah, and she actually says, oh, looks like your girlfriend came to the rescue. And then Jean responds back, you got that right, lady. So it's like, we actually established the relationship without them establishing their own relationship.
I didn't catch that. They ended up getting to have the DTR talk.
Yep.
In a fight.
Yep. And that's where she pushes her so hard that the wall collapses on top of her.
And then we kind of like quickly wrap up because they're now in the jet. Actually, it is a nice way they reveal this. You just see like black screen and Jean's voice saying, okay, you can open them now. And once again, from Scott's point of view, you can like see the ruby kind of shading on everything, opening up and seeing Jean, and he's like, oh, everything's better now. Oh, so sweet.
And then you get the moment where it's like, oh yeah, Logan and Storm, and Logan's like, about damn time.
Right. Which is so weird, especially after seeing X-Men 97 and stuff. Like, just that character, like, being like, oh, good, you know, Jean and Scott are together. I'm like, wait, when have you ever wanted that?
This is the only universe in the entire multiverse where he's okay with that.
Or I'm wondering, like, I'm kind of glad that I'm assuming they didn't get the chance to do this because of it being, like, abruptly ended. But, like, if this is supposed to be kind of like a loose prequel, if it had kept going, like, if this is supposed to be a prequel to an actual universe, that when, like, Jean and Scott do get, like, much older, you know, like a decade or so later,
then Wolverine makes the move.
Then Logan starts, you know, crushing and stuff.
The moment she hits 28 years old, he's like, I'm in.
Yeah. But once again, we have to... You knew her since she was 18.
Younger. Yeah. Definitely younger.
But no, in this one, none of that. He's just, like, happy for Scott and Jean. Also, probably done with student drama. I think that's more of it. He's just like, listen, I don't want to deal with any of your guys' shit. I'm just here to fight.
Yeah. I want to blow stuff up. Yeah. And that's how the episode ended. And it was like... It's very much the product of its time, and I don't say that as a negative, but like when you see the audience that it was written for, it was definitely written for that Buffy audience with like the teen drama, and there are stakes, but the stakes don't feel as high. Yeah, it's like it's solid. I don't dislike it, but it's like I understand why the animated series in '92 built the level of fandom that it got, that it was able to lead to a reboot, a restart, essentially. Yeah. And then every now and then when I see like a post where it's like, well, let's get X-Men Evolution, it doesn't hit the same way. Like it people obviously mention it, but it's not like, oh, we need to get more of it. And there's like a scaled amount of people who are asking for that right now, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of like another show that's like that I enjoyed when I was younger, but I'm like, yeah, it's not worth bringing back, guys. Dude, the amount of work it takes.
And I feel bad saying this because I know some people are mega fans of it, but like even Spider-Man 94, it's great, but I don't think we get the same thing by rebooting that show the same way we would with 97.
And it had a really great ending. Yeah, arguably like one of the earlier like actual multiverses.
I mean, it was the first time the Spider-Verse was ever mentioned, so.
Yeah. And Stan Lee being Stan Lee in the show and stuff.
Yeah, I think we actually need to do that. Not the Spider-Verse stuff, but at least the Secret Wars stuff we're going to have to do as a bonus episode because Storm is all over those. So.
Oh, okay, I'm down for that.
If I know how to get something done in this show, it's getting Rod to say yes by mentioning Storm.
Yeah, so. Storm's in this, and it's not Halle Berry. Also, I guess if you're deep enough in this, not really a spoiler for Deadpool, I was so happy that Halle wasn't in this movie. In Deadpool Wolverine, because I get the nostalgia, but like, man,
that would have ruined that movie for you. I could see you just walking out. You'd be like, "Fuck this movie."
Yeah, no, probably. Yeah, they kept it nice and clean because
they included literally Jennifer Gardner, and you'd be like, "No, Halle Berry, too far."
Right. I enjoyed her cameo. She's looked really sweet. Cool. But yeah, this episode lived up to its title in multiple ways. It did the thing. We got Scott wandering around an alley kind of blind, and also the the other definition where it
The
didn't really
actual
go anywhere.
meaning of it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess what this gave us is Scott and Gina are an official couple now, right? That's what we're supposed to take away from it.
And Mystique is back in play.
Yeah. Where did we left her under the ruins of the building, right?
No, she had disappeared after being brought under. I'm assuming she turned into a rat. Because this Mystique can do whatever the fuck she wants. Again, she's not a shapeshifter, she's a druid doing wild shape in D&D.
Yeah.
So
now, because of what you said earlier, I have an image in my head of her being under the rubble. Like, fuck it, I'm an owl now. And he's
fuck
like,
it, I'm a rat now.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. He's like, oh, the owl won't help you. Okay, but go for it. She's like, oh, I'm more injured now than before.
This sucks, I have brittle bones. Oh, I hate it, Rob.
Anyway, well, thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, I don't know why you would. We'd appreciate a rating on the podcast that you're choosing.
Say that.
Find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox, which I'm still not convinced actually exists.
It lasted longer than Google Podcasts.